So TikTok might just straight up be saved now thanks to Trump. So today, Trump officially urged the Supreme Court to put a pause on the TikTok ban. Now this is huge because if the Supreme Court agrees and puts a pause on the ban, then on January 19th, absolutely nothing will happen and TikTok will just continue as normal. Now this doesn't mean that TikTok isn't still up for being banned, like it still can be, but it would mean that Trump will be in office when TikTok is actually supposed to be banned, and it would give creators and users a bit more time on this app before we possibly lose it forever.
We want to get to some breaking news. President-elect Trump, just in the last few minutes, filing an amicus brief with the Supreme Court, asking them to press pause on the proposed TikTok ban. Now, remember, the court is set to hear arguments surrounding the law, which was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden. That's on January 10th. And the ban could kick in on January 19th. Now, if you're thinking about the calendar, yes, Trump's administration will take over the day after that law is supposed to take effect. And the filing states that he wants to, quote, resolve the issues at hand through political means. Let's go right to NBC's Aaron Gilchrist for more on this. So, Aaron, what does this tell us about Mr. Trump's thinking when it comes to solving the TikTok problem?
Now, Trump's brief says that he's not taking a position on the merits of the dispute here. Instead, he just wants the court to pause the deadline while it considers this case, which would also give Trump a chance to find a political resolution, as you noted. And remember, this law had the bipartisan support that it needed to get through Congress. President Biden, as you said, signed it. That was back in April of this year. And now I want to show you part of what Trump's lawyer argues in the brief that was filed today. He says President Trump received a powerful electoral mandate from American voters to protect the free speech rights of all Americans, including the 170 million Americans who use TikTok. The Justice Department, TikTok, they also submitted briefs today in this case, mostly restating some of their previous arguments here. And, Brian, I think it's worth noting, too, that a lower court upheld the law, said that the government's national security justifications for banning this app were legitimate. So we'll see what ends up happening going forward here.
Well, breaking news from the Supreme Court. President-elect Donald Trump is asking the justices to pause a potential ban of TikTok from taking effect. The video app must cut ties with its Chinese parent company by January 19th to continue operating in the United States. That's the day before inauguration. Trump wants a delay to give his administration a chance to reach a, quote, political solution. Also today, TikTok and the Justice Department filed opposing briefs with the court. Arguments are scheduled for January 10th.
The second is likelihood of success on the merits. Right. We see him actually in writing put that aside and say we're not really going to comment on whether or not this is violative of First Amendment, whether or not national security concerns actually overcome that burden of strict scrutiny. We're not even going to talk about it, that prong that's required. Instead, we hear about his negotiating skills. Instead, we hear about how he had great success using TikTok during the election. So to me, and from the legal perspective, that is not sufficient to fulfill that second prong, seeking a stay. And again, this doesn't mean that there isn't an inquiry by the Supreme Court as this case works its way through the courts and the appellate system as to whether or not there's an issue with that First Amendment concern. It's just about whether or not it's actually put on pause against the will of Congress and the most recent decision at the appellate division.
So Trump is asking to pause the ban on TikTok. He's appealing to his friends in the Supreme Court to put a pause on the ban. And it seems like he's figured out that he has a lot of influence over on the TikTok platform. So he's definitely going to want to try and keep as much influence as he can. And I think this is an overall good look for the TikTok community. This gives them a lot of hope going forward, although I don't think that this will stop the ban completely.
It was amazing. So we got the highest vote ever for a Republican candidate. We won by 36 points with young people. That never happens. A Republican loses by 36 or 40. So I'm going to have to start thinking about TikTok. I think we're going to have to start thinking. Because, you know, we did go on TikTok and we had a great response with billions of views, billions and billions of views. They brought me a chart, and it was a record, and it was so beautiful to see. And as I looked at it, I said, maybe we got to keep this sucker around a little while, you know.
How do you plan to stop the ban on TikTok next month?
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok had something to do with that. Now, Joe Rogan did, and some of the other people that were recommended by my son Barron, he knew names. I said, who is that? Tell me, who's that? Dad, you gotta be kidding. I can't believe you don't know. And I did those interviews, and it was actually sort of cute. Do you want to know the truth? But we did them, and that had an impact. But TikTok had an impact, and so we're taking a look at it. But, you know, we won youth. Republicans are always 30 points down in youth. I don't know why, but we ended up finishing. There was one poll that showed us down about 30. We were 35 or 36 points up with young people. So I have a little bit of a warm spot in my heart, I'll be honest.